my name is Hackett-Bauer, and I'm presenting over Module 4A, Evaluating Formal and Informal Accessible Assessments. So we're going to talk about evaluating school systems, propose strategies for improvement, answer some questions, and then talk about the relevancy and reflection. So, number one, evaluating school systems. So what is a formal and informal assessments? You know, the most important part is teaching teachers how to recognize what the difference is. So the definition of formal assessment is evaluate and monitor the student's knowledge learned after the unit. You know, we would see this for unit tests, say assessments, grades, attached at the end of a semester. So what is informal? This provides immediate feedback, which allows for decisions and modifications to be made. This is in-class discussion, check-in, worksheets, quizzes. How would we see this? Well, what's on this in non-academic systems? So these are activities that would help our academics. I checked with the elementary. They don't really have any sort of, group, but they said, some of the things that they use to help the kids in check is recess. If kids are misbehaving or not acting or not doing things in class, they sometimes will limit recess or do laps. Middle school, to help the accountability, they have a D&F list. They do the standard sports, and then they have Scholars Bowl. In high school, we have a ton more options. We have our D&F list along with all of the main sports. We have clubs, we have fine arts, we have FFA, Scholars Bowl, forensics, and then multiple school-related activities, which would be your, prom and dances and, field trips. So strategies for improvement. So improving the USD 274 practices. So what helps to support academics? The reason why we do this provides a well-prepared education for our students. Our students, they get hopefully prepared in their life/career, what they plan to do in the future. We try to help by making up academic barriers, so helping our students who are behind get further ahead, or helping those who are ahead to be even better by challenging them. Our hope is to create lifelong learners, people who have skills, friendship, teamwork, and ultimately a higher level of thinking. With non-academics, so supports, this would be like our sports activities and clubs. This helps to keep our students focused, on track, and they have to keep good grades to be able to participate. If they're on the DNF list, they can't participate. This helps students drive their passions. If it's a sport, helping them be prepared for that. If it's art, helping them be prepared for art class and a new form or medium. This also prepares students for the future, for their skills, their friendship, their teamwork. And these are also high level of thinking, high order thinking skills. So let's review some questions. So what assessments are used in USD 274? I went through and I found all of the assessments for elementary, middle, and high school, and I've listed them out. A lot of them you're going to see across the board are the same. For all of them, we do state assessment. For all of them, we do fast bridge screeners for math and ELA. Granted, it's going to be at a different level. Obviously, we're going to treat a elementary versus a middle school versus a high school are completely different. SABRS, which is our social emotional, again, same thing there. It's going to be different as well. For elementary, we have DIBELS screeners, and if I understand DIBELS correctly, I apologize, I'm not an elementary person, but it also is another form of assessment geared more towards math and ELA. They also have the ASQ3, which is the kindergarten readiness, saying how prepared are kindergartners. Now, going back to middle school, they have Zello, just like high school. Both of them have it. It's a career aptitude test. We really don't start Zello until 8th grade, and then we focus more on it in high school. But because we do introduce it to them in 8th grade, I put that down. Our core teachers, they have to work to unify their curriculum, across the board for middle school and high school. And then the only other difference that high school had is we have the pre-ACT for freshmen and then the ACT for juniors. But across the board, these are our formative assessments that we are using. Other assessments, I spoke to a couple of teachers and I checked in on, what do you guys do that's not these formative assessments? And again, I can only speak for the high school because that's my building. We do, actually, I am in charge of this. We do weekly guided reading assessments. These are timed tests. So we found, after looking at the data, that our students, yes, they definitely struggle with sometimes the subject, but what the kids really stress is that they really struggled with the timed test portion. So what I do is each week I create a test that I send out to the freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. And I'll say, okay, freshmen to read this, they need 8 minutes. And then, sophomore 7, junior 6, and hopefully senior 5. And they can read these passages and they can all answer the questions in that amount of time. And the teachers know I send out a general test and they run the timer. The other teachers also said that they do check-ins before their formal assessment. So, like halfway through the unit, let's do a check-in, see where everyone's at. This would be probably considered, it could be formal, informal, depending if it's just checking in physically or giving a quiz. We also have weekly social and emotional meetings. It's split up by grade and gender. So, for instance, the freshman girls will meet during a time, the sophomore, junior, senior, and then they'll do the freshman boys, sophomore, junior, senior. They'll meet up, so they're in, similar like groupings. And then the last thing is a lot of teachers told me that they do daily warm-ups, check-ins before they start to see what did the students retain from the day before. So those are some more examples of informal and formal. So, gaps in our district assessments. Gaps in our students' abilities, this is based on isolated topics. So, I talked with my principal about this one, and she said ELA is probably across the board consistently low. And where we get this data is from our state assessment and our ACT. So, I'll go more into that a little later in the slide. The other assessment we have is math. She said I've seen the data as well. We vary greatly on this one from year to year. When we have high achieving classes, the math assessments will look great. Our math will look great. When we have low years, lower achieving students, it will not look very good. Our science varies year to year. Actually, typically our science does test well across the board. It's one that we have to do very little intervention for because they do actually do so well. So, some of the in-house testing that we do for interventions, this would take time during our guided study time, which is our intervention time. We use FastBridge in-house to determine the deficiency. So where are our students lacking in the math or the English? Then they use this program called IXL to work on those deficiencies. So for example, let's say I'm just going to use math. Let's say you're in math and you still can't multiply. So maybe your unit is going to be work on multiplying in factor, and let's say another student's even farther behind. They can't add. They can't do basic math skills like that. So the IXL program is broke up for that individual person and what they need help on. And then again, most teachers are all required to do a formative assessment. So actually, this is a high school thing. At the end of the semester, every teacher is supposed to do some sort of formal assessment to see what the students have learned. Some teachers do an end of the chapter unit, and some teachers do a summative unit. I personally have no other option because I teach band. I have to do a summative. So I kind of talk about, what are the main rhythms we worked on? What are the main themes? And so on and so forth. So, assessment quality for curriculum. So the following assessments, these help to determine what are our intervention groups and how these groups are derived and the curriculum behind it. So, like I said, again, we use FastBridge. This is for our math and ELA. We have SABRES, which is for our social emotional, what the students need. And then we have our IXL, which, is the program to help our students who have been diagnosed or pulled out for the math and ELA. Another one I thought was really important was our grades. So what our teachers do, and I think they do an outstanding job of communicating this, especially when they come in their freshman year. Different hours in the day, we have a high math and a high English. So for example, let's say freshman English is offered 4th and 8th hour. You can enroll, if the teacher says, I think you need a little bit more help, I recommend you enroll in 8th hour. The same goes for math. They'll say, oh no, you're not ready for Algebra 1, you need to take pre-algebra. So pre-algebra is offered 3rd hour. So the teachers do an outstanding job diagnosing which groups the students need to go to. Assessments results evaluated. So this is going to depend on the class and the teacher. But, most our teachers they don't always do daily homework. Sometimes they'll do weekly, as well as weekly tests or quizzes to check in. Most teachers do monthly or, unit chapter test. And then, like I said, at the end of the semester, we have finals. And then the big one that we use to help with our formative assessment is state assessments. These really break our students off between who is high and low and where they're falling for the standardized assessment. So cultural responsive assessment. So the ACT breaks it down by financial demographics, race, gender, and parents' education. And the only other one we have besides that is graduation, and that breaks it down by race, gender, and parents' education. Here's my references. So we're first page, second page. And then finally, the relevancy and reflection. So relevancy, this assignment helped me to see that the practical side of how formal and informal assessment can be applied for our academic and non-academic settings. I primarily focused my attention on the academic side, and that's what I did a deep dive into for formal and informal assessments. The biggest takeaway I got from this was we have room for improvement. We need help on our assessment scores in our district. I'm not sure that we need to add more tests. I think the tests and the programs we have right now are sufficient, but I believe what we're doing is adequate, and we just need to up the more time we have interventions or the amount of time for our interventions. Reflection. As a future administrator, I believe that our test scores will help guide the decisions I make within my building, school, or district. If we don't use that data for those decision-making skills, then, we're only going to go backwards. The data is what's going to prove to us what we do need to and not need to do. And I think my presentation was created showing what the data-informed decisions are, what we're doing to help our students, how an informal versus formal assessment works. So, there we go. Thank you so much.